Good afternoon. This is Game 5. I take that back. It's session number 5 of the Cuyahoga County 2014 to 15 biennial budget hearings. The clerk will please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Jones. Mr. Rogers. Here. Ms. Simon. Here. Mr. Greenspan. Here. Mr. Miller. Here. Mr. Brady. Here. Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Here. Mr. Schron. Ms. Conwell. Here. Ms. Conley. Here. There's a quorum.
Thank you very much. I would like to entertain a motion that the absence of Councilman Schron, who will not be able to join us today, be excused.
Move to excuse.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Ayes have it. It's approved. Is there any public comment related to the agenda?
No, there is not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I now turn the meeting back to Council President Conley for the part regarding Jeff Applebaum.
Mr. Applebaum, I understand that you have an introduction to make for us as it relates to the hotel project, and if you would come forward, please.
It's actually an introduction relating to the convention center project. I'm pleased today to introduce you to the general manager, the individual who will be the general manager for our convention center and global center project, Mr. Mark Leahy. And I'll just tell you a couple things about Mark and let him just say a few words to you. You can ask him a couple questions. When we went through the approval process, as you all know, we went through the approval process and selected SMG as the new operator. But part of that process was selecting, and we had the right to approve of the general manager for the facility. And we had actually, we had a choice of resumes, and we pushed SMG to give us the individual that we would consider to be a rock star to really make this facility what it can be. And the individual that we became very excited by and really insisted on having was Mark. Mark, by the way, Mark is sort of a foreigner, so when he still has this sort of Irish Boston accent. But despite that, after doing a lot of work in Boston, working at Savannah, he actually opened the center in Pittsburgh, the David Lawrence Convention Center in Pittsburgh. That's about 10 years ago, right? Something like that. 10 years ago, which is a fabulous center in Pittsburgh. He opened it up successfully. He's been managing it ever since, and he's done a tremendous job. We checked all of his references, everyone who knows him in the industry. And he knows everything about how to activate a center, how to work with the convention center hotel, how to bring events into the facility. So we're just really delighted that Mark's coming on board. There'll be an announcement later today, a feature in the Plain Dealer after this introduction. His process is going to be that he's just finishing up some things in Pittsburgh. They're doing their transition to his successor there. He has an event there next week that I guess George Bush is going to be there, and he has to be there for that, but then he'll be done. And then the following week, he's actually going to start here, and he'll be working on the transition here to SMG. So Mark, if you'd just like to come forward and say a couple words. They can hear your accent then.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jeff. And I am very delighted to be here. On behalf of my company, SMG, and in the 15 years I've been with them, it's been a very exciting ride, and I've seen and had a chance to look at the package that, talk in terms of packages that have been pulled together with the hotel package and in the building, the convention center, as well as the global center, is just tremendous. My company, at one point, I was ready to be transferred out to Philadelphia. And First Tier Market thought it was the place to go next. But I took a look and the company asked me to come out and meet with Jeff and a few to see what was actually being done here in Cleveland. And I was just struck by it, just tremendous. The energy that's here, again, these projects are just wonderful, and it was very contagious, and to jump in and just feel the passion, really, that I've seen from the staff and so many people that I've met so far. So I look forward to this very, very much. Jeff mentioned being a foreigner. When I was in Savannah, I did make an introduction. I was introduced to the council down there, and one of the members asked me, being a foreigner, how was it that, what attracted me to Savannah? And I thought maybe she thought I was from Ireland or something, so I said, I'm from Boston. And she said, yes, being a foreigner, how did you find the, so we're not going to quite feel the same way here. So I've been embraced by so many people, and I am quite grateful for that, and sincerely look forward to working with the county, working with the city. We will try to position Cleveland as the place to be, the place to come visit, and to experience the lives that you have, the character of the city and the entire community. And that is something we will push regionally as well as nationally and ultimately internationally, hopefully. So I look very much forward to working with all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions? Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate having you on board and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of you.
I hope so.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to ask if the clerk would please read the resolution.
Resolution number 2013-0229, a resolution adopting the 2014-2015 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you very much. And before we begin, I'd like to ask a couple of things of the people that are going to come before us today. I know the temptation is very great to use these hearings as an opportunity to showcase the accomplishments and initiatives of your various departments and agencies, and some of that went on yesterday. But unfortunately, we have a very tight schedule, and so I ask you. Please not to do that, and to focus on the budget issues and needs of your various departments. Most of the agencies for today are public safety related. Councilman Gallagher runs a very fine committee and meets on an almost weekly basis, so that's the place for that more detailed operational stuff to be discussed. The second thing is that with most of today's agenda being non-executive departments, I'm expecting, as we saw 2 years ago, that you will come in and directly tell us what things are not included in this budget that you want and need. And I strongly encourage you to do that. Today is the day to do that. We want to get these things on the list so that we can start considering them. And I assure you that I and my colleagues will consider the items that you bring forward. And if things are brought forward later in the process, it would be much more difficult for us to consider and incorporate some of them. So please do that today. Finally, Judge Melody Stewart brought to our attention that she has a conflict later in the afternoon, and so we're going to accommodate her and ask her to come forward first. but other than that, we're going to run according directly to the schedule that's printed. So, so anybody who's not yet here, I do encourage you to watch the monitor online and come at the appropriate time, and you don't need to sit through the entire afternoon's program. So, so Judge Stewart, I would ask if you could please come forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of council, and thank you for accommodating my conflict. First, let me start off by saying we are not requesting any funds for 2014. As you know, the Court of Appeals receives only operating funds from the county. No personnel funding from the county is received by the appellate court and has not been since December 31st of 2011. The court currently has a funding request before council for a complete computer system upgrade. I apologize, I should introduce our court administrator, Uta Vilfroy, who I'm sure you all know, but I didn't want to be rude. So the court currently has a funding request before council for a complete computer upgrade system using available 2013 county funds. If funding is not encumbered for 2013 for use in 2014, then a funding request will be forthcoming for the court in 2014. The computer system we currently have throughout our court has reached the end of its life cycle, and it must be replaced. Our equipment is 5 to 7 years old, and quite frankly, it is appalling. I might turn it on before I come over, and hopefully when I get back, it'll be up and running. The court, in cooperation with the clerk of courts, will begin accepting documents and pleadings for e-filing actually this week, November 1st, is our rollout, with a buffer period in January 1st being mandatory with some limited exceptions to be sure we allow access to justice. As a result, we may have additional technological needs which are not yet determined. The Court of Appeals strives to maintain the efficient operations, access to the courts, and efficient services while mindful of its fiscal responsibilities. The court has historically ended each year well within its budget appropriations and will continue to be good steward of public funds. Thank you, and I'll entertain any questions you have.
Okay. Is there a copy of your written testimony?
Yes, we can provide it.
Would you please forward that to Trevor McAleer in our office, and then he'll distribute that to the council. Thank you. Okay, so as I understand it, you have sufficient money in your 2013 budget to do the computer upgrade, and you want that money to be used for that purpose.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
Okay,
No,
I've been corrected. That's not correct.
That money had not been allocated to us for 2013, but we were informed that we should submit a request rather than putting it into the 2014 request to have the money appropriated from the current budget to be used in 2014. And that was in conjunction with the Justice Affairs Department.
And do you know how much money is required for that?
We had originally estimated about $350,000, but we've been informed by ISC and Justice Affairs that they believe they can do much better on the pricing. So we're hoping really to come in at least $100,000 lower than that estimate. The prices that we had obtained were retail.
Or at least 75 to 100,000 less.
Director Rubino?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that request did come to the Deputy Chief's office, actually. It is a request for the computers that we do have. We have submitted it to Jeff's office to get more accurate pricing. I believe that dollar amount may actually already be on a future agenda item in November.
Right, it's,
So,
my understanding is $366,000 for November's agenda for that item.
So, Director, this is going to be in a bi-monthly resolution. Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
And if they're saying we only need 250,000, why is it being submitted for 366,000?
We had hoped that ISC would be able to give us accurate pricing before our meeting today, but that has not been the case. So as soon as we get that pricing, that appropriation either can be adjusted, or we will defund those monies that are not needed.
Okay.
Our
right.
estimate is based on retail.
Okay, we'll work it out. Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Questions by any members? Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Parks on this item. Did he, and while he's coming up, did he say the item's coming before us in November?
It's going to come to the council in one of the bi-monthly resolutions.
Right, it's, my understanding is on the November 12th agenda.
For council?
That's
or
correct.
for the Board of Control? Council?
Council,
It's on the fiscal agenda, not Board of Control.
exactly.
Those items, this is more philosophical, those items that are coming before us to be encumbered this year, are they included in the projections, the Q3 projections for the rest of this year?
They would be in the projections for the rest of the year, yes.
So even though there'll be a 2014 spend, it'll be a 2013 financial transaction?
Right, so if whatever is not used would be pre-encumbered and the balance would be paid off in 2014.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
you got off easy. Okay. So now we return to the regular agenda, and we're going to start with the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Bova.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may request that everyone who comes up to the podium speak directly into the microphone, and if you're sharing it, you both need to speak into the microphone because we are recording this. Thank you.
That's good advice. Thank you very much.
Chairman Miller, council members, thank you for your time. The first handout you have in front of you is the organizational chart. As you know, we have a lot of moving parts in the Sheriff's Department, and some of them are 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. In my 7 months as sheriff, our goal is to bring some of our operations out of the Stone Age and modernize services with modern techniques and technology. The monster in the room for us is the jail. We must cut expenses, modernize, and at the same time maintain the safety. With the new emphasis over the years of local incarceration programs, we have to be creative to maintain control of our facility. We have proposed and are comfortable with a $1.7 million budget cut. We propose to reach that goal by working with Public Works to refigure the vehicle chargebacks, which will save approximately $100,000. We will try and cut jail overtime expenses by $500,000. We are starting to see a reduction now as we have worked with HR to hire COs to fill the openings, and we are close to full complement of COs. And the new modern techniques which we are starting to use, the jail video arraignments, instead of actually bringing the inmates to the courtrooms, is starting to take hold within the court system. We are now closer than ever with Metro Hospital to take control of the jail medical unit. That after discussions with Metro, we would see a 50% reduction in inmates that leave our facility for tests. These outside medical costs would save around $670,000. This does not include the cost of a deputy or two transporting and sitting on details in the hospital. Also, we will be taking advantage of a 2012 COPS grant that we are awarded to hire military personnel. These 8 full-time employees, better known as FTEs, will be taken off of our general fund budget and paid the next 3 years via the grant index code. This will save $442,000 in 2014. In early 2013, we began correcting, and it will be fully implemented in 2014, leveraging our grant appropriations and working in conjunction with OBM, we will be offsetting our expenses from the general fund from these appropriations, which include $93,000 in the apprehension unit grant, the local incarceration program, which the state refunds us $201,000, and the HVEO, the high visibility enforcement grant, for $67,000. We are very conscious of our budget and are implementing an in-house breakdown of the approved budget to each unit within the Sheriff's Department. We will earmark and make sure that the supervisors in each individual unit or division is aware of their available approved budget, and they can track their expenditures to ensure accountability across the board. Also, and finally, we have requested additional funding, which I've shared with Chairman Miller, and via the decision packets. And we only requested 4 additional fundings. 2 of them are already being addressed and will be appropriated in the 2013 budget. So we won't need them for the 2014 budget. And that is the bulletproof vests, which have expired, and the tasers, which will be updating the tasers. Also, one of our 4 requests is the vehicle build-outs. Public Works handles the purchases of the vehicles, and we are requesting, and it'll be in the capital outlay for the vehicle build-outs. And finally, Marine Patrols, which is separate from the Canadian Border Initiative, and that will be revisited after the first quarter to see if we were able to manage our overtime and all our goals that I've set forth here. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much, and that's a very succinct and budget-focused presentation, and if everybody does that today, we're going to have a great afternoon. So I commend you for that. Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and really to the chair of the Safety Committee and the chair of Finance, as well as the sheriff. This is another one of those areas where policy crosses over budget, and I want to not dwell on the policy, which have been very interested in since the beginning of the relationship between Metro and the sheriff's office, and along with Councilman Gallagher, who certainly has been the person who's been in the lead position on this. Has there been a formal rollout of this program? I mean, it's been sort of a work in progress for since we got here, between the administration and some members of council and the sheriff's office. And so I know this is a budget hearing, so I'm not looking for something like that, but I'm looking for some direction about whether there's been a public rollout of this new integrated relationship between Metro and of course, to the extent it affects the budget, I'm going to try to segregate that out so we don't get lost in the policy discussion about it.
We have been in extensive negotiations and conversations with Metro, high-level meetings. They have been in our building, touring it over the last month, and we're prepared. The health spot that's outside, they're going to be bringing in 2 health spots that will help. So that we've already measured, and we'll be presenting that to the public safety as soon as we get it in concrete.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I didn't want
to. The first initial rollout will be hopefully in December.
December.
And
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, and with the appointment of Dr. Boutros, we've found a newfound partner.
Absolutely.
Fully, which has been really a blessing.
Well, I know Dr. Boutros is going to be in front of this committee as well, but, he hasn't actually, I've gotten to know him pretty well, but he hasn't actually been in front of the council, as far as I know, to give any sort of a, to give his sort of presentation or introduction formally. He's sort of met most of us informally at one point or another. So I don't want to drag down whatever presentation he may have in this one particular issue, but I'm just indicating an interest in knowing when that's going to happen. So
I know he had a meeting with the executive. I mentioned the electronic medical records, and he seems to do want what we want to move forward with this, and I believe he's had contact with sheriff. So
That's correct. We've all met at Metro and here, and it's being pushed forward. And as soon as we're ready to, as soon as we're comfortable to unveil it to the council, we will.
great.
well, I'll be looking forward to more detail.
I am too. Thank you.
Ms. Simon, Ms. Conwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff, for your presentation. In terms of the jail overtime expense savings, how have you or will you manage those cuts at the same time, providing the safety? How are you going to manage that?
Well,
Expenses for the jail.
first of all, the manpower is almost at full complement, so that's going to be number one. A lot of the overtime with the jail is there's a sense of entitlement. So I'm up there 2 or 3 times a week, and we are changing the mindset up there that this isn't an entitlement. We know overtime's needed, but we're positioning several of the COs to compensate. I know there's built-in overtime that I can't control in their contracts, and the contract negotiations are coming up, and we'll see what happens with that. So, but I'm not relying on that portion of our plan.
Thank you.
Ms. Conwell.
Yes, through the chair to the sheriff. You mentioned the COPS grant salaries for 8 to 9 employees. How long is the grant for?
We have an extension. It's for 3 years.
For 3 years.
Correct.
And what plans do you have for the employees after the grant cycle? Are we looking to add them back in to the budget?
Yes, that would be our goal in 3 years, to add them back into the budget, correct.
Okay, and next question would be, in Schedule 2 of the General Fund Departmental Summary, under the Board and Care of Prisoners, the actual cost was $470,000 in 2011. How many prisoners does this cover? What is the cost per prisoner?
The cost per prisoner is $55 per inmate per day.
And you got to come up to the...
$55 per inmate per day for housing them outside of the county jail.
And could you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Donna Cleo. I'm the manager of the Sheriff's Fiscal Division.
All right, and a follow-up to that, can you clarify for me why the Board and Care of Prisoners stand alone from the sheriff budget? Why is it separated up?
That actually would probably be a question for OBM. We've had discussions about bringing the board and care budget underneath the sheriff's budget, but for some reason, they did not want to do that. They wanted to keep it separate from the sheriff's budget, so I'm not sure why. Just like when the funds come in for housing the federal inmates, that does not go into the sheriff's budget. That also goes into the county budget. So all housing of inmates other than outside of the county jail or housing of federal inmates is outside of the sheriff's budget. And again, that was a discussion we had with OBM, but it was a decision made by them.
We have Director Parks coming forward for some further clarification.
Before when the sheriff was an elected official, that was a required expense by the ORC of the county commissioner. So the board and care was under the commissioners, and the sheriff was a separate elected official. Now that it's no longer elected, now it's together. And technically, maybe it could be one account, but that's why it was set up separately.
So is there a plan? They said they had conversations with OBM, so is there a plan to move that under the budget?
That could certainly be discussed.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I have a question regarding the last page of your presentation. On leveraging other grant funding, is that different from what you have listed under the FY12 COPS grant salaries? Are these different grants that we're talking about from that?
That's correct. This is different from the COPS grant.
And could you explain a little bit more about these? Are these grants that are going to enable us to achieve some cost savings?
Yes. The apprehension unit grant is for 2 deputies, and I believe it's paid for through the court, through a court grant. And that's been going on for a few years. The local incarceration program is, as the paper suggested this weekend, they reimburse the county $201,000 to keep nonviolent first-time offenders in our area instead of sending them to state prisons. And the high visibility enforcement grant is for overtime, separate from the deputies' duties that you see out on the highways and stuff.
So these are not new items. They're things that we've had.
These are not. That's correct. These are not new items. The only difference and the only reason that I'm bringing attention to it is in 2013 we were realizing that the appropriations were going back into the general fund and not coming back to meet our expenses. So that's been adjusted by OBM and our fiscal department.
Okay. Other questions? Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. Just on the same subject with the leveraging other grant funding slide, are these annual grants? And I'm sorry.
Age old?
Are they annual?
Oh, annual. Yes, they are. Yes.
And do we have, what future commitment do we have that these will be offered to us?
Donna Khalil again. As for the apprehension unit grant, that is something that we get through the corrections planning board through the court system. That would probably, I know Greg's in the room, maybe he could answer that, but I know that's a grant that's been going on for quite a while. I don't want to say it's a guarantee, but it's under that grant, we formed our apprehension unit where we go out and arrest, people with warrants. So that is a grant, again, that we've been getting for several years. And but we do get it through the courts, so that might be a question that you, if you're looking for how long, a question for the courts. As for the local incarceration, I mean, again, there's no guarantees, but that's something I work with the state on. They are very motivated to continue to give us these funds because they don't want the prisoners coming down to a state prison. They want the prisoners staying here locally. The $200,000 they give us probably saves them over $1 million, I'm assuming, because I know what these inmates, they cost us more than the $200,000. So these are grant funds that I apply for every year, but we're told as long as we fill out the application, it's pretty much a guarantee we're going to get the grant funding. And then the high visibility enforcement grant, that's another one through the state. This is the state's motivation for keeping the highway safe. There's not enough manpower in the municipalities. There's not enough funds in the municipalities, so they are offering it to counties now and jurisdictions, all local jurisdictions and counties, to pay overtime to, again, ensure the safety on our highways. Again, through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, I'm being told as long as we continue to apply for these grant fundings, it will be there indefinitely, but I can't say guaranteed.
And I think the sheriff mentioned that prior to 2012, that these grants were being recorded in the general fund and not offsetting your expenses, correct?
That's correct.
In 2013, are they now appropriated against the sheriff's department?
Correct. We began to make the adjustments. We began to make the corrections in 2013, setting up separate index codes for these grants and then doing expense adjustments, getting the expenses out of the general fund and into the actual grant where the funds were going. Okay. So the revenues were coming in, but we were not offsetting our expenses through the general fund.
Because where I was going with that, just curious, if it wasn't done in 13, then 14, these would be additional savings that could be recorded on the front page. But you're saying between 13 and 14, they're already consistently reported.
No, we started making the corrections in 13, but you're not going to see that the cost savings will start to be realized in 14. We just started setting up the index codes and things like that in 13. You'll start to see, that's one of the reasons we were able to cut the 1.7 off of our budget, because we're going to start realizing the savings in 2014.
Well,
You got to stand over here.
yeah, I guess where I'm going, in looking at the slide, it doesn't have that 300 and some odd thousand, so might you want to add it, so your savings is really 2.2 million, 2.1 million? If they're not, if you're looking year-over-year savings, I'm saying it helps your positioning your savings.
Correct, and that's what, if by chance I needed to offset our savings in the overtime, if I don't realize the projected overtime savings, that's where I would pick it up at.
Okay. A question on the board and care, somewhat of a simple question, maybe. How is, and this is what 55 days, what we pay for outside jail service. How is a day defined? Is it, and the reason I ask is I run into this before. Sometimes a day is defined as 24 hours. Sometimes it's a calendar day, which means somebody gets booked in at a jail at 10 p.m. They're discharged at 8. It's actually 2 days, even though they're there less than 24 hours. Just curiosity.
What we do is we have agreements with all the different municipalities that participate with the prisoner board and care, and the agreement basically states that we will pay you for the day they come in, regardless of the time. We do not pay you for the day they leave, regardless of the time. So it usually balances itself out, but that's how the agreement reads. We were trying to do it where we wanted to do it on the quarter hour, and it became such, it's so convoluted. That's the way we did it, where it was actually the most consistent and the easiest way to bill and to be invoiced and things like that.
Okay, great. A question on the COPS grant. I see that it's set to expire in June of 2015. I guess we have to assume that we're not going to receive the grant again, although we can. From a budget perspective, from July of 2015 till December, were the costs of, following Councilwoman Conwell's point, were the costs of those officers remaining on our force contemplated back into the budget? Or was the whole year? So this is what I'm saying. So the grant expires June of 2015, in the middle of the year.
Yeah, we've already extended, already requested the full extension process, which will give us through June of 2016, an extra year.
But so from a budget standpoint, the assumption is in the budget that you're going to receive that extension?
That's correct. We've already received a few extensions, so we don't foresee a problem.
Okay. And then just my standard question that I ask, did you make any other requests, verbal or written, for additional budget items that were not included? Because I see no other considerations in either one of your budgets. So
that's correct. The 4 I made have already been addressed.
I'm sorry?
The 4 that I made were already addressed.
Okay. All right. So you've made no other requests for appropriation?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question on the board and care. Any anticipated savings coming down the line with regard to the arrangement with Euclid, if that's going to be moving forward?
I'll probably defer to Norberto Colon. Myself and Norberto have been working in conjunction to prepare for either Euclid or other jails that we may take over. So that'll eliminate board and care altogether if these plans work out.
To the chairman, to the councilwoman, that's correct. I think the reduction does take into consideration at sometime in 2013. And I'll talk a little bit more about it during my presentation, but we do expect a reduction in the fees from 55 reimbursement to 50, and we also expect some additional housing to become available.
Councilman Galvin.
Sheriff, jail kitchen cost overruns, is there going to be a cost overrun, or are we okay on that?
That would be a question for Public Works. Bonnie Tiwan's group is handling that. It looks like there may be. I'm not 100% sure.
I'll present it to them. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay. Next on our agenda is our Clerk of Courts, Ms. Andrea Rocco.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council. Thanks for having me here today. I provided a handout and had a PowerPoint presentation, but to try and keep this as succinct as possible, Councilman Miller, as you mentioned, I'll just call you to page 15 in the presentation that's in front of you. It basically gives you an update of where we are on the number of foreclosure cases that have been e-filed. And you can see that right now about 50% are coming in electronically and the other 50% are coming in over the counter. I draw your attention to this because these filings, along with the other civil filings to date, are only making up about 8% of the number of documents that I'm taking in on a daily basis. So it's just 8%. At this point, I will just entertain any questions you may have on the budget itself.
Okay, we're going to start with Councilman Gallagher.
I didn't ask, but.
You pushed your button. I took that as a request.
I'll not do that in the future. I notice you're not asking for any raises, any COLAs, any bonuses, merit adjustments.
No,
Why?
sir.
And I would put this to the committee of the whole. I've noticed where the courts have across the board asked for 3%. For both years, I would suggest that we hold that for our discussions at the end of the presentations, because I think this is an opportunity for us to bring all employees in the county onto a level playing field that are not in a union. So where we had 3% here, this court was over here, this court was over here, the sheriff was over here. We need to bring everybody into the same playing field and look at our budget and see if the money's there for that. Like last year, the county employees got a 1% plus an adjusted bonus if they qualified due to their merit. That some other places got 3% across the board. Completely unfair, not right, needs to be adjusted. It needs to be fair to all employees. I'm not saying that we couldn't accommodate the 3% or the merit adjustments or the COLAs, but I think we need to discuss that in a big, universal kind of manner. Other than, I would say, the domestic court requested the 1% I believe that we got last year. I don't believe they got a proper response from the administration. I think we need to adjust that, and I think we can do that in this committee as we move forward. I think they deserve that. They asked for it. They didn't get a follow-up from the administration, and we certainly would have entertained that had that been brought to us. So I think that would be fair. So, Madam Clerk, what I'm saying is that when we put everybody together, if the committee agrees, that we'll look at everybody across the board, county employees, court employees, your employees, sheriff employees, everybody gets the same across the board. And it makes for a better Thanksgiving dinner down the line.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any special costs relating to your operation? And I know one is the fund that the previous clerk had. We have to find the individuals we owe the money to.
Right. You're speaking to the unapplied deposits. That was the about $25 million that was found in the account.
Is there a cost? Do we have a cost for that?
Yes, there very well could be a cost. What I'm trying to do is whittle that report down and get the money accounted for electronically as much as I can, and then find out what I'm left with. At this point, we very well could need at least 3 new employees to handle just that function.
Because the last I remember in committee, you were asking for temporaries to do this.
Right, but I'm also down so many employees, and our cash handling procedures as a whole we're looking at those. So the folks that would be hired to handle the unapplied deposits would also be having regular work to do as well.
Okay. And do you anticipate adding employees?
For that alone or overall?
Overall.
I'm going to keep a very close watch on what happens with electronic filing. We currently have 4 people who are handling the electronic filing right now. But as I mentioned to you, only 8% of the number of filings that are coming into us are electronic, and that's taking 4 people. We are doing, as you all know, duplicative work. So we're handling a case electronically, and then we're also handling the paper file. And even the ones that come in electronically, we're still handling a paper file. So we're keeping a look on those costs and trying to make sure that we stay on top of the numbers so that the court gets the documents that they need to get in a timely manner. If for a short time, I think I can sustain these dual roles, a short time. If it is going to be a long-term process where I'm to handle both a paper file and an electronic file, that would substantially increase the number of people I would need and affect the budget.
Well, where I'm going with that, I noticed that the probate court's asking, I believe probate's asked for 3 employees for the scanning and I believe the e-file process. You being a much larger operation, I would imagine we're looking at a substantial amount of employees once e-filing is made mandatory, whenever that is.
Only if it's mandatory and I'm doing the paper file.
Well,
Councilman,
then
right.
that comes out of the common pleas budget, not yours.
Okay, well, that's right now it's coming out of mine. Right now, I'm the one who's responsible for both.
If you're comfortable with it right now, that's fine, but down the road, when we've been through this in committee, the purpose of e-filing is not to have paper filings.
I understand that. If I'm going to do dual roles, if my staff has to do the dual roles, I think it would be a total of 19 people, and that would probably amount to about $1,300,000 more.
Well,
if I have to do both.
All the incentive to have mandatory e-filing, or somebody's budget's going to get hit pretty hard. Thank you.
So to follow up on that, you're saying that if you have to do both e-filing and paper filing for the same cases on a long-term basis, you would need 19 additional people to do that? Is that?
That's what I'm estimating now.
And you said 1.3 million per year?
Yep. When I figured salaries, benefits, and the cost of the paper and the printing, $1,320,000.
We need Councilman Gallagher to stay on his high horse and prevent that from happening. You've been doing a very good job on that. And also on the other question regarding documenting that money that's owed on those cases.
The unapplied deposits?
Right. Am I correct that currently there's no money in the budget for that?
That's correct. But I currently do have some postings, Councilman, and I'm thinking we can try and do as best we can to tackle that. The more I can whittle down that huge list, the easier it will be. And we are making substantial progress in doing that. Posting the costs where they can be posted and figuring out where the money goes.
And what's your estimate on time to completion on that project?
I would like to have that list available in January to the public.
Questions by my colleagues? Councilman Germain. Oh, Sonny, okay.
Thank you. The boxes that were removed from the basement of the old courthouse are now in storage and being recorded and copied. Yeah. What has been the quantified cost of that to store and to move them?
Well, you remember, Councilwoman, what the basement looked like. It looked like in the old courthouse. So All of that was removed in less than 2 months. I think I had a slide, but you know what? I can't. It was up here.
Madam Clerk, I see the slide. I just don't see the cost.
There isn't one. What we did with that is our existing staff was able to do that along with the trade staff. And as far as the scanning, the imaging, I believe, and Norberto, you can correct me, you or Chuck, that is just being taken out of our general fund.
Sure, we have to find the dollar amount through the chairman, but it was a chargeback, both the movers and the scanning, so we'd have to find that.
Are these boxes in county storage?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just want to be sure of that.
So they're in one of two places. They're either in county storage or they are waiting what we call the staging process in the county scanning area, where they're staged there, where they will be imaged and microfilmed. Of course, now, beginning in March, we image every single document. So that is going to save us considerable amount of money and space, because the image, unless the law says otherwise, will be the record that we will hold on to eventually be microfished.
When you said starting in March, did you start it this past March? Or
Right. In March of 2013, we started imaging every single document that came in under the civil division, which included domestic and foreclosure and board of revision. Criminal has been imaging for several years. I want to say at least 5 years. However, even though they were imaging, they were still keeping every single case in paper. And those case files were all over the place. I mean, in closets, under desks. It was quite an animal to get our hands around, but the staff did a great job. And as I said, by March 1st, we have a very good idea of where our inventory is and what our plan is.
So for the civil documents, are you keeping just the images and not the paper?
No, we still have paper while the case is active, because that is what the court requires at this point. Those cases that eventually close, then it will just be the imaged copy that will become the record.
Another question, thank you. With regard to some of the employees that were let go, a lot of them were senior and had a lot of institutional knowledge. And knowing that you might have to hire additional staff to handle the funds on hand, how is that justified, to have to replace people with a lot of knowledge, with new people coming in now to hire new people?
Well, it's justified, Councilwoman, because all I know is since this new staff has come on, our numbers are improving. We are more efficient. We are able to plan ahead and think outside the box and try and follow efficient business processes. We try to spend the taxpayers' money as if it's coming out of our own pocket. So I have not. We are moving forward, and the people that have been brought in have hit the ground running, and the staff itself are fabulous, very hardworking and eager to accept new processes, and have been very much a part of having new ideas how to change a process that they've been doing for 2 decades, and a way to make the process more efficient.
There's a cost to let people go, and there's going to be a cost to rehire people to handle these unclaimed funds. But is that going to be a temporary position until these funds go down, or what's your plan with those?
Right now,
employees?
Right now, I have no plan to hire people just to handle the unapplied deposits, if that's what you're talking about.
Unapplied.
Right.
Right.
And for instance, there used to be a person that was supposed to be in charge of records. He was probably one of the highest paid employees, and that job just wasn't getting done. So I brought one person in who basically is handling much more and handling what he got paid to do, and it's getting done much more efficiently.
Other questions? Councilman Greenspan.
I noticed there are no other considerations component of your budget, so I'm assuming by that you've all your needs are being met through this budget?
Right now, yes.
Okay,
My only concern is the one that I mentioned earlier on e-filing and doing the dual roles.
Okay, so you've made no other written or oral requests for additional funds that are not included in this budget?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to bring forward Dr. Tom Gilson, our medical examiner, with Hugh Shannon.
You can sit down for a little bit, I think. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I regret that we did actually have a fair number of introductory slides to highlight the accomplishments of the office. I don't say that so much for my own aggrandizements as a nice thank you to my staff who did the heavy lifting to make us look this good. So I'm going to go over most of those very quickly and get to our budget in the spirit of what you said, Chairman Miller. We have been able to provide better service in terms of finishing our cases much faster. We turn our work out more rapidly than we did over the previous years. We've not really had a decrease in the amount of casework that we do. I would draw attention to the fact that the sexual assault initiative, which is going to come up in some of our budget discussion, is now currently operating with no backlog. Our organizational chart, I'm sure you can review on your own, and this brings us to our budget. I would say that in general, and I'll show you a slide soon, our practice has been that our budget is adequately covering our needs. We keep within our budget. We do not overspend on our budget, and it's not my intention to overspend on our budget. The adjustments that were reflected on this chart, we are able to adapt to, and I think that all in all, I recommend this as a workable budget for us. In terms of funding for the office, 60% of it comes from the general fund. We have a general fund subsidy that is cataloged separately to support the crime laboratory. That accounts for about 30%. We also have about 7% of funding that comes from outside contracts. We provide autopsy services to adjacent counties, which represents the bulk of that funding. And then we have some intergovernmental source of funding. Our use of the funds pretty much mirrors that, in that 60% of our operational costs for the medical examiner's office covers our operations, and then another 30% is directed towards the crime laboratory. We also have the benefit of using the medical examiner fund for purchases of equipment and to offset some personnel costs as well. That's the pie charts here. I came on board in 2011. Since then, we've been able to steadily decrease our actual expenditures over that time frame. 2013 is an anomalous year because we had a lawsuit that required a one-time payout for uncompensated overtime. Otherwise, that number would have been lower than 2012 as our projection. And as you can see, for our future budgeted items for 2014 and 2015, I think we should be able to stay within those. And I was just going to show this. We are commencing a large capital project to renovate space on the third floor of our building at University Circle for the expansion of our crime laboratory, and that was done without general funding. That was done from the Grudadoria settlement, which was money that was recovered from a criminal to help start a crime lab. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you have on our budget.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and one clarification. Am I correct that the general fund is 60%, the separately listed subsidy for the crime lab is about 30%, and that all other sources of funding are about 10%? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of your question.
Am I correct that the general fund provides about 60% of the total, and then the separately listed general fund subsidy for the crime lab is about 30%, and all the rest is about 10%? Is that approximately correct? Oh, okay. 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 Questions? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the medical examiner, just a question in regard to the personnel services. It said you had reduced hospitalization costs were reduced about $92,000. Could you explain that a little bit?
That one I'd have to ask Mr. Rubino to come back to explain.
Okay.
For someone from fiscal. I'm sorry, Councilman, you were asking about the decrease in hospitalization?
Yeah, it says reduced hospitalization costs were reduced.
They're lower than the prior year. There was no intended reduction. I think just depending on the mix of employees and whether they're choosing single or a family coverage. So there's been no.
So that's for the existing employees,
Correct.
not the ones that may have left or
It'd be
laid
for the
off?
existing employees, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Greenspan.
Did you ask, were there any written or oral requests for additional funding that's not included in this budget?
No, as I said, we get the budget, we live within our budget.
Okay, so you need no further funding for the next 2 years.
We can live within the budget as it's spelled out here.
Very good, thank you.
Go ahead.
Doctor, your storage, where do you have excess storage, or do you need storage space?
Yes, we do actually. The way our building is structured, we have a 6-story main facility that houses our operations. We rent some of the space to IT for Case Western, which generates revenue for the agency. Separate from this, we have an annex building, which was designed for a couple of purposes. We currently keep our archives on site there, and since they've come on board, we've undergone a kind of a utilization review of how much archives we actually need to keep there. We've increased our general storage space now so that we can account for another 15 years of storage before we would anticipate reaching maximum. Okay. And we also are trying to go back and microfilm 20 years from 1973 to 93 so that we'll have additional space there. That space also in the annex is part of our educational mission, so we have a mock crime scene there to train law enforcement personnel, and we've also recently been able to rent a portion of it to our partners in law enforcement. That was formerly our grief counseling space, but that function was discontinued shortly before I arrived, but we were able to rent that space and generate revenue from the rental of that space.
Is the county's involved in trying to get a storage facility up and running? And for the committee, Council President, myself, and the administration had a meeting, and the Council President will be contacting you individually. I think we came to a mutual agreement, and hopefully within the year, maybe a year, we can have something up and running, and you'll have extra room over there, and that's for the courts also. So we're going to afford that to everybody in the county, but it's been a very delicate thing to do, and so hopefully we'll have that up and running. But you'll talk to everybody.
I'd be completely behind it. The only concern it expresses that part of what is stored there is evidence, and it's in locked containers and things like that. So as long as we work out the details, yeah, we have some space there.
Right, great, thanks.
Doctor, when we did our first biennial budget 2 years ago, there was some discussion about the crime lab, and the presentation that was made was that we were going to expand it, we were going to improve it, we were going to make it better, we were going to enhance its capabilities, and by doing so, we would contract out with a lot of other communities, and it would become more self-sufficient with the help of the other communities buying our services, and the sense that I get is that we have expanded its capabilities. We are contracting with other communities, but we're not charging them a whole lot, and as a result, we're not recouping very much of our cost, and I was wondering if you could comment on that and say whether going forward, whether we expect to achieve any significant progress on it becoming more self-sufficient, or is this kind of the way it's going to be going forward?
He can't handicap the whole race there, but I think there were unrealistic expectations as to how much revenue the crime lab was going to generate within our community. I think that the fee structure that was originally set up really discouraged people from subscribing because the alternative to our crime lab is BCI, which is free. So as best as we could, I think I'd like to provide top quality service, which our laboratory does. I'm not saying BCI doesn't, but I do think the laboratory does a better job. We were able to offer things that aren't in that scope. And I think that that was part of getting that service necessitated being realistic about what people would actually afford. So what we did was we took a la carte pricing that people were willing to pay before and tried to work around that number as being more realistic. As a result of that, I think we have realized less revenue. The other thing that's generated less revenue and increased the general fund subsidy is that we don't charge for the sexual assault initiative. That represented 5 new employees and significant additional DNA testing. The benefit of that is that we have tested over 600 sexual assault kits prospectively. We did not want to go back into the mire of trying to test these old rape kits, sexual assault kits, and decided that that was best left to BCI. That doesn't mean we're not reducing the backlog. Those 600 kits are kits that BCI does not have to test. And it was decided at the time we initiated that program that that service for the foreseeable future would be at no cost. So that also, I think, puts the general fund subsidy to the crime lab as not generating revenue, as a negative revenue generator, costing money.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Next we go to Justice Services. Mr. Deputy Chief Cologne.
To raise this up, I'm a little bit taller than Dr. Gilson. Good afternoon. I do have a brief presentation that I'll go through. The first one is just kind of a refresh of the way the department is structured. Our 14 recommended budget is a reduction from 13. As you see there, a difference of about 2.9 million or 17.7. The bulk of that reduction is really in 2 areas. The first area is that we were part of that consolidation of moving IT folks over into a centralized department of IT. And so as Jeff presented yesterday, we had 5 employees that actually went and were reduced out of our budget and became part of his. And that just happened in the last year or so. The second reduction is that the 13 budget accounted for the one-time large expense that we did for the next generation 911. So that in and of itself was a $3 million contract. That was just kind of a one-time. It's not an annual expense. That annual expense for next gen 911 is about $900,000, and so you'll see that being a decrease there. The proposed budget does meet the needs of the department. I would like to just address the decision package question right now. When looking at our budget, we expected some decreases across the board. And so we did take that into consideration, but we had 2 areas that we wanted to support with some of that potential reductions. The first one is the Fusion Center, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But the second one was kind of a 911 Shared Services Fund. As you know, we have a 911 Shared Services Fund committee. That committee right now oversaw $2.5 million that sits in that Shared Services Fund. The goal of the committee is to never let it get down to a balance of about $1.5 million. As of right now, during the budget process, it is not below that. We're expected to be about $1.7 million in January of next year of dollars sitting in that fund, and that is enough as we move forward. But again, we do expect to add additional dollars to that in the future, but at this point, there's not a need for that, and I'm sure Mr. Chairman Gallagher will have some additional questions related to that. Staffing is at 101. Again, there's no significant changes from 105 to 101. We have about a dozen part-time folks or so within the department. And our new initiative, so 2 slides here. The first one, again, is the Northeast Ohio Regional Fusion Center. The Fusion Center is a county and a city collaboration. It's been around since '07. And so we've always expected for the last 2 years that the grant funding for that was going to go away. So this is something that we expected. This is a reason why we knew we had to reduce our overall departmental expenses through 12 and 13. And we, as you can see in the previous slide, we did do that because we knew we would have to support the Fusion Center moving forward. That support is in the form of $218,000 in 14. We're also supporting them through Director Maury's shop. They're actually, as of a week ago, his shop has handled most of the IT support over at the Fusion Center. I did put the mission statement up there for those of you guys that are not aware. But this is an asset. I think one of the things that we're going to do with the Fusion Center is we're going to expand crime analysis out into the municipalities. Today, the crime analysis function of the Fusion Center is really being given and being used today by the city of Cleveland. And so as we bring them under the umbrella of Cuyahoga County, we're going to expand that out to municipalities. So that's that is in the budget. You see it in the document. The other thing that is new, we were able to do it within the 13 budget, but it is a new program, is the Ready Notify system. I did get a chance to present part of that at the Public Safety Committee, and that's Gov Delivery is the vendor that we selected. Again, the program is called Ready Notify. We're currently piloting it within the department right now. And so that pilot is going well. We plan on implementing it for county employees towards the end of this year. And then in 14, we want to expand it to municipalities throughout Cuyahoga County. And then the final 2 initiatives that I have are larger ones. The first one is the Emergency Operations Center. We've been doing kind of a lot of pre-design. Most of it is kind of figuring out what are the needs of emergency management, CCOMs, and special operations, which are urban search and rescue teams, hazmat teams, and those type of things. So a lot of the last year has been what are the needs and what type of facility are we looking at. It is a key component of the 911 consolidation plan, and as we get a handle of where those centers are going to be, it's going to help us finalize our plan. The last thing, I know that you wanted to engage in another discussion on another building, but that discussion is something that we will start in either later this year or first quarter of 2014. And so again, all we've done is some of the pre-design stuff on that to figure out what type of building we think we need. So I'm sure we'll have many discussions on that here with all of you. The second one is the jail consolidation. Obviously, we're the planning arm, my department, of the jail consolidation. Obviously, the sheriff and his staff will oversee whatever that looks like, and we work together every day on this project. The goal is pretty simple: reduce the number of jails in Cuyahoga County. In that, you're going to save a lot of money across the board for everyone. Current discussions do continue with the City of Cleveland and the City of Euclid. They both are aggressive. You have heard me say on the City of Cleveland side that that's been aggressive for over 2 years. I think that hopefully we are getting close. Again, we have had discussions with Euclid. We are doing a separate assessment that begins in November. That's going to just gather the basic data, and we talked about this at the Public Safety Committee, from all the jails, how many beds they have, what's the cost of operating, are they interested in consolidating, do they send out any prisoners elsewhere, those type of things. We plan on actually creating a plan and releasing that early in quarter 2 of 14. That, from a budgetary standpoint, that would be set up as a separate fund where revenue would come in from the municipalities that would offset the cost to operate those facilities. So there's no budget request for that because there's no need for that until we have these agreements in place. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am ready to entertain questions.
Okay, that was concise and meaty. Appreciate it. Questions? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the director, and it might be for OBM. In the Schedule 1 General Fund operating, in 2012 it was about $233 million. It shows a slight increase in future years. So it's under the Justice and Public Safety. That might not be directly. Is that all directly under you, the Justice and Public Safety?
I think with respect to the budget book, I think that's everything that's being presented today, but
Yes, if you're looking at Schedule 1, public justice and public safety are the courts, county sheriff, prosecutor. So it's all those agencies that are in
So
that
the
that
increase
program area.
might not necessarily.
Correct.
Okay.
It's within that group.
You-
It's a fairly large group. Think
Thank
about our
you.
pie chart. It's about 60% of general fund is justice, so it's the courts and everything
He
else.
talked about a lot of savings, and I'm like seeing the increases, so you're good. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Director, has the city of Cleveland submitted legislation yet on the jail consolidation?
They have not. I'm being told that they will be submitting that, and they plan on passage in December of this year. We are moving forward. We continue to move forward with the planning on our end. It is pretty aggressive still, but we will. That is one of those cases that once they submit it, we'll be ready.
Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. On the, you had a slide earlier on the EOC, and you mentioned that we've heard in committee, there is discussion about other facilities throughout the county, whether it be joint PSAPs or consolidated PSAPs. But I don't see in the budget any money other than $1.5 million for the EOC for these other related facilities or complementary facilities. Can you address that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that I understand your question. There's no appropriations in the budget today for the EOC. That's accurate. I don't understand the second part.
So, well, there's $1.5 million in here that's for the EOC data center. So there's no money in here for the EOC other than that.
That's accurate.
All right, and what other costs are we going to incur related to that EOC?
It's unknown until we're in a position to present that to you. There's been two options since the beginning. The one option is obviously build, own, and maintain a building that's procured and bonded out to whatever that cost is, which we don't have today. Or the second option is to engage into a long-term lease with one of the municipalities that have agreed to host the Emergency Operations Center. Right now, it's too early to know what that's going to be.
But it will take place within this budget.
We hope that Emergency Operations Center will be built within this 2-year period, yes.
Yet the budget has no cost associated with it.
That's correct. Right now, the budget reflects emergency management operating as it does today.
Do you envision the county at some point needing to appropriate money for even the planning of this project?
No, the plan, I think a lot of that stuff's going to be based on our discussion with council. Right now, most of the planning from the administrative side has already been done. We have appropriated approximately $200,000 in the planning efforts for that.
And that's all you're ever going to need?
Until we're ready to present and engage in the discussions, we just don't know through the chairman.
The jail consolidation project, the slide you brought up, I also see no money in the budget for anything related to that. Can you explain how that will be, that?
Sure. The first, in 2013, there was $50,000 of an RFP that was placed out. That's the assessment that would begin in November of 13. That came out of my budget in 13. The second part of the assessment is the National Institute of Corrections. That's at no cost to the county.
And there'll be no other, here's where I'm going, all right? This is the time for whomever thinks they need money to present it to the county, all right? And discussions maybe have been held with the administration, but we vote on this at the end of the day. I'm going to ask Mr. Rubino, starting in 2014, on these bi-weekly appropriations, that all additional new spends be in a separate resolution. Because right now they're buried in one. Because I want these brought forward. Because right now, my concern is there are things that are going to come forward that are not being presented to us today.
Well, I understand your point, Councilman Greenspan. I mean, first off, they're not buried. I mean, they're
in there. I'm not saying
well, they're
buried.
not just in there. Yeah. They're summarized in a memo. Any
Correct.
new appropriation in general fund by internal policy of our office, there is a separate OBM briefing document that goes with that new appropriation. We've also noted in areas where there are general fund or HHS impact, we denote with a footnote that they're included in the projections. So we can entertain doing two different fiscal resolutions. I just think it's probably a redundant policy to start undertaking that when we're clearly I think meeting the objective that you're laying out is that we identify new spend, which we do. And again, we're also giving you a more thorough treatment and narrative when we do our quarterly or monthly reporting. So it's something we can entertain. As director, I don't know if we're really accomplishing or providing any new value by having a separate resolution for things that may be new.
Well, let me restate that, not to imply that buried meeting with the intent not to present or to deceive, but I'd like it to be brought forward in a more direct way that we see point blank any additional requests, as opposed to it being included in a separate. I'd almost look at it as a separate subject.
I think this may be a good discussion then for Finance Committee.
Right.
I think there are merits to that, but I think we should probably discuss how I want to go, because that is, I mean, in a way it contravenes what we've always done. And we feel we've provided you information on new items. And in fact, most of the time what we try to do, what we strive for in our ongoing business process when it comes to the budget, especially general fund and levy, is to provide you a heads up in the quarterly reports and then follow up with the actual appropriation request. The appropriation request is more or less the capstone or final step. You as council members and decision makers should already be informed. What we try to do is make sure you're informed before you see it appear on an agenda. So I understand your point.
Once again, not implying that there's anything. I just want to make sure. I believe, especially with these two items, that they're going to be brought back before us within the next 2 years, asking for additional money. I also believe that we heard testimony today and over the past few days regarding other items that are going to be coming back. I just want to make sure that the expectation is when we adopt this budget, that this is the total spend. And I believe that there will be items over the next 2 years that are going to come back to us that should have been included and contemplated in this budget that are not. And I just want to make sure that the council itself is aware specifically and directly of these items. That's my only point on this.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I can address the second part of the question related to the jail piece.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Mr. Chairman.
I'm done.
You're done. Okay, we're going to go to Councilman Gallagher and then Simon.
With all due respect, Councilman Greenspan, it's a little disingenuous to be doing what you're doing when you vote against the budget. I don't see how you can make these demands when your intent is to vote against the budget. You did it last year, and this buried in these various words. You can't say that. This is a new day. We've been as open as we possibly can. And these questions of, have you submitted everything? Is there any? It's almost like this is a courtroom. This isn't a courtroom. These are people that we respect, that are professionals, that are giving us their information as true as they know it. We don't have to put them on trial. But if you're not going to vote for the budget, it's disingenuous for yourself to move forward with these demands. It's just not right. I think we need to treat these people with the respect that they deserve.
I did not vote, Mr. Chair, for the budget last year because it had deficit spending. And I will not support a budget that has deficit spending. I haven't made up my mind on this budget. I haven't decided if I'm supporting it or not. And I believe my position last year proved through by the fact that we have put a health and human service levy on the ballot this year in order to shore up a budget, which had an issue identified 12 months ago. So I stand by my decision not to support that budget. I do believe we're going to be presented with other items before this council for the next 2 years that are not included in here. And all I'm asking is bring them forward to separate resolution so we can see what's identified as being an additional spend to the budget that was approved. That's my question. That's just it. I believe that there are items that have been presented by non-executive related entities that have not been presented to us to understand what they're looking at to operate their agencies and their departments effectively and efficiently. As ones who are responsible for voting on the appropriations of this county, we should have that same knowledge. That's why I asked the questions.
Ms. Simon.
My statement was going to be that we can't expect these budgets to live in a vacuum. I do anticipate there's going to be projects and other items coming before us in the next 2 years, and I don't expect everyone coming up here to tell us what those are and what they're going to cost. What I heard the director say is he anticipates there will be costs when we look down the road with the jail consolidation, but he doesn't know yet what those will be and that this will come to us. So in some ways, I don't find it productive to talk about these items in that specific way, because we don't have the detail, and that's what the issues are. We don't have detail. I mean, conceptually, we know we have these projects coming. That's no secret to any of us, and I appreciate the questions. I just don't think we have the time or ability to assess speculative cost. So that was my statement. Budgets are fluid. They're not static. So we need to just move on, and I appreciate hearing your request that perhaps were not honored, but I don't need the transcript of a discussion between the administration and the requester. We have our independent way to analyze this. I don't need to know the executive's reason for denying or agreeing to these requests. We can hear them. I want to hear them, but we as a body need to make our own decisions based on these items. Those were my statements. I appreciate the question, but in terms of detailed analysis of what's coming down the road, we don't have the time or prophetic power to determine that.
I would just add that it's that I agree that we can't know everything that's going to come up during the next 2 years, but it's also good to at least get some sense of what's coming down the pike, and I think identifying those things so that we can start thinking about them is useful, and we should continue to do that. Councilman Germana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We don't have a crystal ball. No one's got the crystal ball. What's going to happen? Insurance companies, I can tell you that they project what losses are going to be with the greatest expectation, and they set rates on that, and that's what budgets are about. It's what's expected, but stuff happens. So I do appreciate asking if you had something proposed that was rejected. I think that's fair game. Because I'd like to know that too. If we're rejecting something, I'd like to know the reasoning. So I don't think that's out of bounds, but I agree that there's going to be appropriations asked for in the coming years that are not covered by this budget, and some of them we're anticipating because you've already said that you don't anticipate, but it may be. So let's continue to just move on in a civil manner.
Are there any other questions for the director?
Mr. Chairman, if I just need to make one comment for clarification on it's the emergency operation that we just don't know, and we expect a very high level debate here as you've been doing with all the other buildings you've been dealing with. So we just don't know. But for the jail consolidation, similar to a question that Councilwoman Simon asked 2 years ago, that in that project it will be cost neutral. In the Cleveland proposal, that revenue that we will accept offsets 100% of our costs for that project. And the discussions that we're having with Euclid would be very similar. And so that will be, you'll see revenue that will equal expenses at a time in which we're ready and able to present that to you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. Our plan is that we're going to do the public defender and the law library, and then we're going to have a short break before doing the four courts. I think that's kind of a natural transition. So, Mr. Tobick, our public defender, you're next. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. As usual, the public defender always gets to talk before the break, which is an optimal time. I'm going to be succinct, which is very difficult for a lawyer. We did what we were supposed to do.
That's appreciated.
We did what we were supposed to do, and then some, and we intend on doing the same going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to address the general budget recommendations. I would ask the council to adopt the base recommended budget. I think it reflects what we anticipate to be happening. As to the decision items, we have a request for a case management system as a decision item. And we have been working with Jeff Mowry in the Information Services Department. I'm aware that you're putting out a request for proposals or a request for, you're examining the whole issue of case management and data management for the county. We have put this in because for a number of years we've been trying to update our system. You know, when people come before you, they say we have a silo and the sheriff's silo doesn't talk to the prosecutor's silo, et cetera. We have a corn crib. And I think we really need to get into the 21st century. The state public defender is working on a statewide system for public defenders that is not going to be rolled out in the foreseeable future. It's been proposed to be rolled out at the end of the last 4 years and still not ready. So I've been working with Director Mowry to try to get us a system that would work with getting a request for a proposal or request for bids so that we have something that is much more efficient than what we have, which I believe is perhaps a 1994 case management system. The second item is that, as a decision item, is that in consultation with my Public Defender Commission, we decided that one thing that the office is lacking is a middle management administrator, a public defender office administrator. Through the years, there's been some attrition at the upper level of management and then the middle management for administrator. And the feeling was with my commission and my feeling also that we need someone that can be the funnel to channel the requests and problems to me and also make sure that certain things are available. We have posted the description on the county website and on the public defender website, and we have received some responses. For unanticipated things that, as you know, the public defender lawyers are unionized. We are in the process of labor negotiations, and depending on the outcome of that, we may be back in front of the council. Also, there is the consent decree that was entered into in federal court on case processing, the Domroff case, and as of now, the impact of that is unknown. It speaks to getting representation for indigent defendants in the municipal courts, and as we discussed briefly last week when I was here at the Justice Committee, that may require additional staffing, additional funding for attorneys. One other thing that you should know, that as of July 15th, the state public defender is now reimbursing at a rate of 40% for indigent defense, as opposed to the 35% that they had been doing previously. So on our public defender common pleas and juvenile and appeals budget, that would reflect an increase of approximately $425,000 to the general fund. The state public defender has spoken on that matter and has suggested that perhaps it would be appropriate for pay raises or for more expanded funding for the individual public defender's office. So with that, I am open to questions.
Thank you very much. Also succinct and meaty. Appreciate it. Questions? Councilman Greenspan.
I just have a question. So you currently do not have, you have 100 and some odd employee, around 100 employees, and you have no administrator?
Correct.
So how does your, well, maybe we'll bring it up in
That's
public.
why my hair is gray.
Well, and you're only 30, so.
Well, not quite, yes.
Okay, all right, all right, thank you.
I wish that Councilman Schron were here because this was his line of inquiry, but in his absence, I'm going to do my best. And we had a process earlier in the year where we brought in the results from the Archer study for both your office and the prosecutor's office, and you brought in a proposal which implemented the Archer results, the first step, which was to take those people that were below the minimum and bring them up to the minimum. And you also proposed a second part, which would move people along in the steps where you felt this was appropriate. And in the Finance Committee, we decided that that both requests were appropriate, but that since the second piece was generally not being done elsewhere in county government in most places, that for consistency we approved both the first part, just the first part for both you and the prosecutor's office, bringing people up to the minimum. But Councilman Tron's analysis of the changes that were actually made suggested that there were changes made that went beyond just bringing people up to the minimum, that there were other changes. And I would like if you could comment on that.
I can comment on that. There were, in fact, other changes that were made. When we were here before the Finance Committee, when the discussion was on the implementation of the Archer study, that we also, as you have correctly stated, proposed a method to put people in the appropriate step that the Archer study would require. And we proposed a method of doing that, which we had proposed or discussed with the Human Resource Commission, and we outlined it when we were here. And Councilman Schron's instructions, I remember quite clearly, was that it was not appropriate this time for your council to appropriate funds for that second phase. And he suggested that we do evaluations of the non-bargaining staff and then come back at a later date with a renewed proposal on how those people should be moved. However, as I've already discussed, that the reimbursement from the state of Ohio has gone up as of July 15th. As we were reviewing our staff members, that on the implementation of the Archer study, the increase in funding and by what we had in our budget, I was able to place some of the people, including the 4 who had gotten no increase from the Archer study, in their appropriate step based on our formula. And I think that it was an appropriate thing to do. The remainder of the people that were slotted by the Archer study have not moved, and other than a promotion, and we anticipate coming back with, following Councilman Schron's instructions, with base evaluations and then evaluations on down the line.
Well, Director, I just want to tell you that I have a problem with that. And I don't know where the rest of the council is, but my concern is that your office is not operating as a vacuum. We're looking at all of county government, and there are pay equity problems scattered across the board, and we're trying to do this in a way, we don't have the money in county government to fix all the pay equity problems all at once. It's probably going to take quite a length of time, and we're trying to do this in a way that's fair and consistent to everybody, and where you don't have some that are farther along than others, and so I think during that budget process that that we were pretty clear about what we wanted to do in terms of doing this in a way that was consistent for everybody, and so I just want you to know I think that went contrary to our clearly expressed intent.
I understand that. My feeling was when I was reviewing the 4 zeros that that was an egregious misslotting based on their experience, their years of doing whatever they were doing, and also based upon some input from my commission. And we do have, as a non-executive branch agency, some flexibility with the budget. I stayed within the budget. I followed the council's advice as to all the rest of the Archer study, but the 4, what I considered to be egregious misslottings, I corrected.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair? Yes. Just a comment. I understand the position in the history of the Public Defender's Office, and I'm satisfied as long as the office comes in within the budget and allocates fairly within that range. I'm satisfied with that explanation, and what was done as a remedial way to address some egregious and pay equity issues. And slowly we're doing it. Other departments have done it. We'll come together at some point, and I think we're almost there, but sometimes as long as you're within the budget, I'm satisfied.
Councilman Gallagher.
You do understand when you did that, the phone started ringing.
Well, and the mail got hot, I'm told, and I'm
Probably,
aware of that.
Probably not signed either.
No, I believe it was. No, it was signed.
We got anonymous stuff too.
But you know, I really do think in the overall salary structure, those were the appropriate adjustments. Maybe it shouldn't be a consideration, but it was an important morale issue because I had a number of people in my office come to me and say, how can these people get 0? And that's one advantage of public service because unlike in the private sector, everybody knows what everybody else is making. And normally they're complaining about, well, somebody's making more than I am and that shouldn't be. Well, in this case, people were saying, how can this person be not adjusted by the study? The study was supposed to accurately reflect where they should be. So I did it, and I understand your criticism, but I felt it was the right thing to do.
Well, as Mr. Miller says, and Councilwoman Simon, we saw the inequities throughout, and we're trying to fix those, but as Mr. Miller says, we can't fix them all at once, which is why when I looked at the budget and all the courts are coming in at 3% and things like, I think what we need to do is start packaging everybody as a county employee and looking at them as a county employee and not a public defender or a prosecutor or common pleas or probate. And historically, that's where all the trouble begins. Because I've been around when certain courts got more than others, and it's not good for morale, and that's usually a year of discomfort wherever it is, and that doesn't need to be.
And I agree, and that's why that we didn't implement the other scale unilaterally, but these needed to be done, and the total impact was 0.25, under 0.25% of our budget. And, you know, we are intending to follow the ongoing evaluation, and that we did propose a method so that it could be used county-wide, and there was some interest from the Human Resource Department of the county as to maybe this would be a pilot project. So, you know, we're certainly trying to do that.
You're not the only one that's done this, but it comes a point in time when we will say enough.
Councilman Germano.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Tobick, now this is going a little bit into policy, just to bring me up to date. It's related to the budget. How is it determined which cases the public defender gets versus cases that get assigned?
That's easy. There's a formula, basically, that in order for our office to get a fair and random mix of degree of case, that some years back we agreed with the court that the cases as they came before the court, whether it be an arraignment or now an early disposition hearing, that if the case ended in 1, 3, 5, or 7, that would be assigned to the public defender's office unless that new person already had another lawyer on another case, and then that would go to the other lawyer. And similarly, if the even-numbered cases we had the client already, then we would get those cases. That on the death penalty cases, we would have 1/2 of every other death penalty case. So in a death penalty case, there are 2 lawyers appointed. So on the first case, we would be one of the lawyers. An outside counsel would be assigned. The second case would be 2 assigned lawyers, and it went like that. If we have fallen under the percentage, and frankly, there's a difference there's 2 court rules applying. One says 35%, one would be 40%, that if I get a monthly tally, so I'll tell the presiding judge that, we've fallen under our quota, and then the judge would add another number so that we stay at the mix we're supposed to have.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up to Mr. Gallagher's comments, we have to reach a balance and find a way to have oversight, but yet not micromanage the court system. And that I don't think we have the ability to get in there and micromanage, and I don't think we should. And the court administrators know what they need. They know what the morale is. They know what they need for efficiency, accountability, and to administer justice. And sitting on this side, we can't make those decisions. I understand the concern is that everything's, willy-nilly, perhaps with salary, but we have to give a range and allow the courts and trust the courts to do their jobs. And I just think we have to reach a balance and not cross over the line. We're a separate body. They're a separate body, and we have to guard against that. So I just want to put that out there, too, that it's a balance.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last, before the break, is Kathy Sasala. Is that the right pronunciation? Sasala, is that correct?
I'm actually Kathy Dugan.
Oh, you're not Kathy Sasala.
Same person.
What?
I'm the same person.
Oh. But
I legally changed my name a couple years ago.
Okay. Well, congratulations. I hope that's congratulations.
Or whatever.
Or whatever. Okay.
It was a good thing. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're happy that you're here. And,
Pardon?
And Law Library. Please
Yes.
proceed.
Yes, I'm actually the librarian and chief administrator of the law library across the street on the 4th floor of the courthouse. And my presentation is going to be very simple. As you may or may not know, our sole source of revenue is speeding tickets and liquor fines. We do supplement that with some grants that we've obtained in the last biennium. With the appropriation of just about $500,000, which doesn't seem to be much, we pay the wages and benefits of only 3 staff. We purchase Westlaw. We contract with the Cleveland Public Library to supply us with our catalog and our web-based services. And we do purchase other databases and books that our patrons use. We do a lot with a little because we're very conservative in our budgeting, and we do spend very wisely. We do not receive any general fund appropriations. We would accept and recommend that you adopt the executive's budget, and we are not making any requests for any decision items. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair, I'm not sure where you said your staff is paid from. They're paid from the speeding tickets?
Yes, we have a, by statute, it's in Chapter 307 of the Ohio Revised Code, sets up a special revenue fund where all of our speeding money goes, as well as the liquor fines. It's like $1,200 a year that we get. And from that special revenue fund come all of our line items, including in our staff salaries or wages and their benefits.
And so that total isn't listed, and this might be for OBM. It's not listed in the personal services. It couldn't be. So it's
personal services is $176,802 for the recommended 2014 budget. And the personal benefits, which is our health care, is $64,874, according to the BD9 that I received from my budget analyst.
Okay. looking at two different charts. So the budget line purpose, I see where thank you.
Sure.
Okay. I was like, 7,000.
Just quick, Mr. Chair, are you finished? You said you're satisfied with your budget. I know how you work on a shoestring. Is there anything that you're not getting done or be able to provide to those who use the library that they're not getting because of this budget?
Not right now. We did sustain some staffing cuts back in the end of 2009, and because we have a bifurcated entity serving you, we have a private entity, which is a nonprofit, and a public entity. So we have additional staff on the private side. So we can provide a more robust library.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Brady?
Yes. Those facilities over there that are so historic and so beautiful, and unfortunately not seen by as many people as I wish, but I don't know how you would accomplish that. Are we able to maintain, are we sufficiently able to provide for the maintenance of those rooms and the artwork there and those things that should be retained for the sake of Cleveland's history?
I believe so. The first part of your comment, there aren't as many people there. We do engage in a lot of activities to try and bring people back to the library. With regard to the maintenance, the cleaning staff and the maintenance crews, Public Works do as good a job as they possibly can maintaining our facility, and we're satisfied.
Is there ever, and I understand that. I've just been, having visited her a couple of times, just struck by, the uniqueness of it. Has there been, is there any thoughts about, or has there been, and I'm just ignorant of it, any inspection by, not just a county sort of inspector to make sure the door hinges are working or something, but someone to actually inspect that artwork and
well, in the 1980s,
and how it's holding up.
Excuse me. In the 1980s, the murals were all lovingly restored by the Women's City Club, so they're in really good shape. We did have some painting done as part of the centennial of the courthouse at my request, and that was taken care of. There is one area of the law reviews where there's a flooring issue. We have tape up, so no one can go there. It would be nice if that were repaired. And over the years, hinges and roping and other items have been appropriated for other parts of the building from our facility.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that you
I put that as delicately as I could.
So whatever you have to do sometimes. I appreciate the fact that you work on such a small budget. I just want to make sure that we don't neglect that building for future prosperity.
Thank you.
Whatever the word is.
Councilman Germano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed funding comes across diverse sources: common pleas, probate, municipal court fines, fees, liquor.
Yes.
With the proliferation of these traffic cameras, are they bypassing, contributing to what everybody else is?
We do not share in the traffic camera fine money.
Okay.
What's that?
I understand that, but
I wish we did.
I understand your question or your answer, but I'm just wondering if everybody has got to share, shouldn't they be? I'm just wondering why they're exempt, and it's because they're new, of course.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, the council member, for example, in Cleveland's case, those are civil penalties, and they're not criminal infractions. So no fees are assessed in the moving violations. Besides what the law library gets, there's a CRIS $5 fee, and those things, several others, Crime Stoppers and those things, there are no fees assessed. Those are considered civil penalties.
I understand, and I think they're escaping.
I like the way you think.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will take a 10-minute break and we will reconvene at 3:15 promptly. Thank you.
Those are money-making machines.
They are money-making machines.